Prologue, shattered. The crowd shifted in anticipation. People from a dozen different kinds, humanoid and not, covered the plaza that led to the great stone arch. Some cried. Others wore stoic faces. A few smiled, eager for the event to commence. On a normal day, the arched pylon, ascending above the plaza almost 20 stories, glowed and hummed with energy. Vast numbers of citizens would walk through the shimmering field to a completely different location thousands of miles away. At this moment, it remained ominously inert. Ring the prisoner! The burly creature looked almost human in the bright trappings of the council guard. His wiry black hair snuck out between chinks in his armor. He had the dark yellow skin and small tusks common to most bugbears. A human guard shoved what looked like a small girl forward. From a distance, she appeared 13 or 14 years old. Although metal fetters bound her hands, she recovered easily and glared back at the guard. Her face had some childlike qualities, but she was a full-grown woman of her kind, a Pydion. Dark orange hair framed her soot-covered face. A breeze caught the hair as she straightened to walk upright. It whipped back behind her head, revealing small ears that swept into a point at the top. She sneered at him. How does it feel to be a cliché? Silence! The guard backhanded her across the mouth. The Pydion shook her head and held it up above her soiled and bloodied clothes. You cannot silence all of us, her voice rose as she spoke. One day the people of Loar will rise up against the rule of the Aeromancers. The bugbear reared back and punched her in the face with a meaty fist. The Pydion flew more than a foot off the ground, sailing through the air toward the pylon. When her back slammed into the ground, the cobblestones tore ragged holes in the once expensive silk outfit and knocked the wind out of her. A few in the crowd murmured in disapproval. Guards placed at key locations around the plaza silenced them by brandishing blades and mauls. A tall human stood near the pylon wearing Aeromancer robes and symbols of the council. He unrolled an official-looking scroll. A thin goatee gave him a sophisticated look. He smirked at the Pydion as she clambered back to her feet and wiped her bleeding lip. The bugbear grabbed her arm and half-dragged her the rest of the way to the great arch. The guards forced the woman to stand under the pylon and face the man with the scroll. Both guards smelled of sweat and metal, and the bugbear had the distinct wet animal odor. Only a few sniffles broke the hush. Lord Sophareth? The Pydion struggled against the bugbear's grip, trying to lash out against the Aeromancer. I would ask if you had any last words, but I believe you have said more than enough. The Aeromancer smiled at her in triumph while addressing the multitude with a spell-enhanced voice. It sounded like a showman announcing the final act of the evening. There are a number of crimes listed here against you, Bard, but only one matters today. For attacking an Aeromancer sitting on the Council of Wind without provocation and with fatal intent. His cheek twitched, still bleeding from the Pydion's blade. In a Methwen Medola, you are hereby sentenced to be thrown to the void. He leaned in close and whispered so that only Inamethwin and the two guards heard. I hope Elmara finds you out there and has no mercy upon you whatsoever. She spat in his face, but the spittle hit an invisible barrier several inches from its target. It floated away in a fine spray before evaporating. The Aeromancer nodded, and the guard shoved the bard all the way through the arch. Fear overtook her defiance, and the woman screamed. Then she fell down below the edge of the land on the other side of the pylon and out of sight. Her scream faded after a few seconds. With the execution over, the crowd wanted to venture to the edge of the land to watch the bard actually die. Even the guards moved back with haste from the inactive pylon. Only Lord Sophareth leaned over to watch. Inertia carried the woman down along the side of the landmass for a moment more, before the rock curved away underneath, leaving her to hurtle deep and alone into the endless vacuum of the void. Shrugging, he dismissed the criminal. She would no longer bother him, or the council, of course. Inamethwin's ears began to pop. The blood running from her nose and eyes froze on her face. before it ran very far. Her vision narrowed as the lack of air began to take its toll. The last thing she saw before the darkness claimed her was the bottom of the island floating in a sea of stars.